So again, welcome everybody. Welcome today at the webinar about MSM's Executive Industrial Policy Program, which will be provided by Professor Dr. Harald Sander. Before we start, there are a few things that I would like to share with you. As you might have noticed, your microphone is muted. Please keep it muted during the whole session, and this way we can avoid background noise. If you have a question, please submit them via the Q&A functionality. Mr. Harald Sander will try to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. And furthermore, this webinar will be recorded, and you will receive the recording plus the slides afterwards. So, and now I would like to hand over to Professor Harald Sander.
Thank you very much, Wendy, for your nice introduction. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the new executive training on industrial policy, which is just very newly developed. But first of all, allow me to say a few words about myself. My name is Harald Sander. I'm a professor of economics at Maastricht School of Management, but also at the Technical University in Cologne. Actually, I joined Maastricht School of Management in 1990 and had the pleasure to partly develop and run a program on it, an MBA program on industrial policy and strategic management, which was quite exciting at that time. But industrial policy has gone through various waves, up and down, and it became a little bit out of favor in the 1990s when everybody was thinking the market could do the job. So I will tell you a little bit now about the program. I'll show you a little bit, I'll show you a video from Harvard University. Some of the gurus on industrial policy will talk there. And after a short poll question, I will do a mini lecture on industrial policy. And then you have the chance, as Wendy has already said, to ask questions, and I hope I can answer them all. Now, what should you know about the program? First of all, what is industrial policy? Well, a modern definition of industrial policy is that it comprises all policy that aims at increasing the productivity of a country. And increasing productivity means it increases the wealth and the standard of living of people. And that is the most important thing. It is not, as some may still think, a policy that is just confined to industry like manufacturing in a narrow sense. But it basically today, it embraces all policies that contribute to inclusive and sustainable development. So why should we do such a program at Maastricht School of Management? First of all, industrial policy has been a key to economic success stories in many countries. You can start with Japan in the 1960s and 70s, and then you can go on with countries, especially in Southeast Asia. Big success story, Korea, which was one of the poorest countries in the world in the 1950s, and much poorer than many countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a very, very relevant issue that we have here. Secondly, when you look into the discussion in industrial and advanced, so-called advanced countries, there is a revival of industrial policy. When we want to have our economies developing in a sustainable way, we need to involve, we need the government as well to allow these developments to happen. Just think of the US program on Build Back Better and the EU Green Deal, where there is a number of things here. So industrial policy is back. It is not something about government policy, but it's basically a policy that complements and supports private sector development. And MSM really, really is an institution that wants to support private sector development. And most of all, you can learn here from experiences. And learning from experience means both. You learn from mistakes but also from success stories. So there are probably as many lessons you can learn from making a mistake. And everybody who has made mistakes, and we all made a lot, we know how we learned from these. Same here, and this is what we want to do with the program. Okay, why should you attend the program? First of all, the program aims at enabling you to contribute to the formulation of an industrial policy strategy in a way that it aims at removing private sector development obstacles to direct the economy on a sustainable and inclusive growth path. And who are you who should extend? From all sides, executives, policymakers, societal leaders of the civil society, lecturers, consultants, everybody who is motivated to learn about and to contribute to industrial policy formulation. Our program finally takes place as a one-week intensive training between 21 and 21st of November this year. Now I would like to show you a little video that is by Harvard University Institute of International Development, really by the gurus of industrial policy. It's about 3 minutes, so enjoy.
So Ricardo, one of the most heated issues, I think, in the history of development thought is about industrial policy. Industrial policy, first it's loved, and then it's hated, then it's loved, then it's hated. I think you and other colleagues have been contributing significantly to a rebound in the reputation of industrial policy. Tell me how that's come about.
Well, I think essentially industrial policy was seen as a tool to stimulate some kind of activity. It was, economists believe that some things that are good may not be adequately remunerated by markets, so we should increase their attractiveness by sort of subsidizing, tilting relative prices so that they become more profitable, and that was a way of intervening. And then you have to somehow decide who you should favor. You should somehow pick winners or something about making those activities relatively more profitable by tilting prices or tilting taxes or something like that. And I think that whole discussion is sort of like, it's in a different place. It's the wrong question.
Okay.
The typical problem in development is that to produce, you need many things, and some of them you can buy in markets, and others have to be provided by governments. Either they directly by governments or influenced by governments. So in order to produce, you have to have, power, water, roads, urban transport, logistics systems, and you also need some regulations. You have to make sure that neighbors don't get scared that you're going to kill them through pollution, that workers don't get scared that they're going to die at your place, that consumers don't get scared that if they buy your product, they die. So you have to create a whole legal regulatory framework to make these activities feasible. And typically, these ecosystems are very incomplete. And because they're incomplete, many industrial activities are not feasible in that place. And you cannot really fix the whole place because, the whole place means thousands of government agencies, millions of pages of legislation, and you don't do that overnight. So the question we're asking is, what improvement to the ecosystem will allow some activities that were not there before to be able to succeed? And we have to start by assuming that you don't know what are the potentially feasible things. We try to learn as much as we can from the things that are already there. Because the things that are already there are telling you, well, my ecosystem is at least good enough for me. And they might signal other things that might need similar ecosystems that might then be feasible, but you don't really know what's missing. So I think that the new industrial policy is an information revelation process about the state of possibilities, the nature of the obstacles, and figuring out whether you can sort out the obstacles so that these new activities can take over. So it's really about productivity enhancing interventions. That is not about giving money to firms. It's giving these public inputs that should have been provided by the ecosystem that are not there.
So you can go on, but I would like to stop here. You got a first introduction, and the next stop, the next thing that we want to do, we want to ask you a little poll question. You know, and when you think about development in emerging markets and developing economies, the question is why sometimes private sector development is not going as planned. So I just listed a few possibilities that you can click. So I would like to ask Wendy now to start this little poll. Wendy?
Harald, would it be possible to go through a few other slides first, because I have some issues with the poll, and then we can do the poll later on. Would that be possible?
Yes, but I think if it's possible now, then it's nice.
Yeah, there's something not working in the system. I have to create another one, but so
okay, yeah, okay, then I go on a little bit. Okay, then I do. Because there's something I have to say already, something about that one. Okay, or let me, when we talk to industrial policy, a big issue is why are sometimes, the private sector not developing as we wish? And there are many, many things that hold back the private sector development. So there are many constraints, and if you think of a developing an emerging economy, quite often there are many things like the ones listed before that actually are not perfect. But some of these constraints are actually binding and others not. So I have this figure here that basically was from Professor Hausmann, whom you just seen on the video here, to illustrate the idea of restraint that is basically binding. So it's not really, that all things are maybe finance, maybe lack of human capital are binding, but in a way, some are more binding than others. So you see here, if you really want to have more water in the barrel, what you have to fix first is the infrastructure. Then you can keep more. When you have fixed that up to here, say, then probably you need to do something on human capital or on stability, right? So to get more water into the barrel. And the idea that we have here, as Professor Hausmann said, we cannot fix the whole place at once, right? So you have to concentrate on things that you can improve, and that you there on new activities that you actually can have that you can actually stimulate. So we need to prioritize, and then we can look as said in the video, and to develop a policy, basically to have an information revelation process, about the possibilities that you can do, new activities that you can go in, and then to ask, what holds this activity back? So it's basically a process that has been taking place between many members of the society. So in a way, and in a nutshell, you can look at it as a process. You look at your economy and you say, okay, what is really holding back private sector initiative? Why are they not coming? And you see, I've listed a number of things like corruption in the thing. And many people think, okay, it's corruption that holds it back. But you may find even corruption, you may also find corruption in the Netherlands, you may find corruption in Germany, where I'm coming from, but is it binding or not? Is it holding you back or not? If yes, you need to fix that first. So for every country at a given point in time, this binding constraint may be a different one. So once you know, that is a big problem and probably the most important problem. You cannot fix, remember, the whole place, then you may need to address that. And once you know that, you can also go for this revelation or collaborative discovery process, which actually should take place between private and public sector. It is nothing that, just the government devises, we do this, we now move into a certain industry. Government as well may have limited information, and they really, really need the expertise of the private sector on business opportunities and obstacles. But they also need the expertise of the civil society for developing a policy that involves everybody, that does not leave people behind. And that is really, in the end, also a sustainable policy path that we put on. And once you have done that, and if you are lucky, you are successful, then say, okay, now we have fixed this problem, and now we need to fix another problem. So you start all over again, and then you have a new problem. So it's a continuous process, which also requires that you should have the ability to correct mistakes. Now, when you look at the historical experience, for example, Korea, some things they started to initiate, they worked, some things not, and then they abandoned, but they were able to learn from their mistake. And when they have fixed one problem, they move to another. And you can also see how they moved through industries, starting with simple industries, going over shipbuilding, then cars, and now they are really, really at the top of even a soft power, in the service sector. So it's not about manufacturing. It can also be about K-pop and movies like Parasite and so on. So view it as a process. So to put it like this, the old idea, when people talked about industrial policy, it was something about the market does not work, and then the opposite idea was the state doesn't work. So it was always kind of old debate and outdated debate on market versus state. And probably, as Professor Hausmann said, of handing over money to some industries. This is not what new industrial policy is about. This is not what we are going to do. We understand industrial policy as an inclusive policy that tries to identify new business opportunities. What is in there for, say, African economy? When we move to a carbon neutral global economy, there may be new opportunities for African economies to contribute, for example, in the production of green hydrogen. There are new opportunities in the digital economy, especially when you think about services. For many developing countries who basically miss, especially those who missed the advantages, the advances that some Asian countries have made, they may have a new possibilities in delivering digital services. And we have to look at, these developments. Are they possible? Are they given opportunity for shared and sustainable development at the end? And basically what we are all about is, we are looking and we're discussing what are the obstacles, both political and economically, that hold private sector development back. And then we jointly try to develop strategies to overcome that. So we are really going into cases and case studies there. So this new industrial policy that we want to discuss with you is a collaborative form of public sector, private sector, and civil societies to increase productivity. And more productivity is basically a win-win solution. It's not giving money from one side to another side, but it's giving more to everybody. So it's really, really win-win. And I hope that you get a little bit excited about the possibility to learn a little bit more about that one. So, and hopefully you are getting ready to contribute to inclusive and sustainable development policies. And hopefully you will join us, because our idea is that we want to learn with you, with experts from around the globe, and as always at MSM, with participants from around the globe. So learning from your experience, combining with our experience and the experts we are bringing in, we would like to make an interesting program for you that you really can take home something there. So thank you for that. And I'm really looking forward to your questions and hopefully I have some answers. Thank you.
Mr. Harald Sander, I was wondering, would it still be relevant to launch the poll now? I know that you've, of course,
I think
yeah, perhaps
we already talked about it, so I think we can
go
directly go to questions
okay.
and answers. I think.
Perfect. Okay, there is a question coming in. Are you able to look at the Q&A functionality yourself, or do you want me to?
I have it, but I don't see a first question here. I see that there's something. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, there is somebody, saying, do I need a lot of prior knowledge in economics, or can I join with a different background? Yes, or no. No, you don't need an economic background. Actually, what we are going to do is, it is not an economics program. You could make it an economics program, but here it's about learning to use the expertise of economists, but also of political and social scientists and engineers and people who have expertise in sustainability, to bring that basically into a new strategy that you talk about. As we said before, it's a basically joint revelation process, and that comes about by talking to each other. So it's not top down, but it's really developing jointly and contributing to the development of an industrial policy strategy. And I think that is really what it's all about. Looking into case studies and look how we can solve problems there jointly. So it's basically a little bit like a language course, where you also need to understand a little bit the language of the others, rather than learning the whole language. So it's about communication and a collaborative effort. Okay, I hope that answered the question. And yeah, there's a new one. Is a course about how to develop an industrial policy. Okay, yes, as we said, it's basically, maybe I can just go back. You missed it. Maybe just briefly go back. It's about countries having a lot of problems. So the idea is we need to find out, first of all, what is a big problem here. But what we learn is basically, or what I want to do with you is strategies to identify, what is holding private sector development back. And we do so basically with case studies with individual countries. And then we kind of try to look at the problem, how to do collaborative, work to really find out where countries could jump in and probably have an opportunity to excel. So in that sense, it's indeed that we develop an industrial policy or that we look at it, but it's not a blueprint that you can give, but for every country and for every sort of situation, there must be different. So we're looking much more at the process, how to come to solutions and what to do, and about the ability to correct mistakes, so that we really can learn from the experiences there. Yeah, so it's yes, we view it basically as a process that should be done for a particular country. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, next question: is there room to discuss or develop industrial policy for particular country, like home country? Yes, I mean, that is basically one of the big stories that we have here. Yeah. In a way, case studies are a key concept here. And so basically relying on both our and your experience is most important to make it a successful course. So we will use, we can use the case of your country. You can work on your country. You have the possibility to discuss the experience of your country, to hear the expert, to hear what other experts say about what they suggest. Of course, you have the chance for your country, but we will also look, at some countries which were particularly good in developing an industrial policy, a successful one. And of course, we also look at failures to understand that. So you get a chance really to discuss the ins and outs of certain countries, but also of a country of your choice. Of course, we cannot discuss every 158 countries, but we can look at, at the participants' country, and we will for sure make a focus that it will be helpful for you. Finally, I think I would say a thing that we have in mind. When we do this type of course and we do it for the first time, what we believe in is that it's not over with the course. Maybe you are yourself involved in industrial policymaking as a member of civil society, or as a policymaker, or in a government, or as an entrepreneur. Yeah, we would like to stay in touch, and get involved probably behind in your industrial policy making in your country, and probably provide you with assistance. MSM has an expert center on emerging economies. We would like to go further in developing industrial policy lab, where we discuss these things. And probably this could be the start for you and us of a collaboration for a long time, Okay, so I hope that helps. There is another question, I see. Okay, you're very interesting course. Skeptical whether the course duration is sufficient enough to master the concept. Yes, I think that, of course, that is something to worry about, because there are many things. But the idea is here also to understand the basic concept of industrial policy as a revelation process, also to change the mindset. It does not mean that at the end, you go back home and after 1 week course, you become the economic minister and revise the whole policy process. But we would like to provide participants with the idea how to do in principle these things, what are the mistakes to be avoided. So it's really meant as an eye-opener as well, how to do that. And as I said before, it's a continuous process. It's not something you learn and you take that package back home, but it's an interactive process that we are looking at. So it's really the concept and not every detail that you can do. I hope that solves. Okay.
Well, I think that was the last question. There's no question left, I suppose. So I would like to say to everybody, thank you for joining. And of course, Professor Harald Sander, many thanks for providing this webinar. And of course, we hope to welcome you all in November when Professor Harald Sander will run the Industrial Policy Program. And for now, thank you and goodbye. And as mentioned before, you will all receive the recording and the slides tomorrow. So thank you all for joining and hope to see you again in the near future.
Thank you, and I look forward to see you in Maastricht. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.